Good morning. Did a share recently. Hey, you know what? Peace that surpasses all understanding. I mean that. There is a peace that surpasses all understanding. When we live from our integrity and our intuition and we act from the heart, I think there is something that happens within us collectively that heals, and there is a peace that surpasses all understanding. I want to make some clarifications though about I did a share recently on I think one man's perspective on collective wounding, and there was a few things in there that the subtleties of language, and I made reference to I've never taken anything that didn't belong to me, and I was making reference to female abuse, men abusing women. Now, if I'm going to be brutally honest with you, and that's me living from my own integrity, oh, look at me, oh, congratulations, Scott, you know, you know what I mean? But what I'm referring to, hold on one second, my air conditioner just kicked on. It's loud and obnoxious, but it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's already 78 degrees outside and very humid. Back to the point. So, I've never, in my relationships, I was never fully present. There was always an aspect of living from the programming that I received, that I embraced, the learning that I embraced, that a man has a certain role and he's entitled to certain things. Jog on. But if going back to my original point, I never took something that didn't belong to me, and that's another one. Took. I want to address that. But right in the moment, what I'm referring to is, I believe, verbatim, I never overtly took something that didn't belong to me. I think is verbatim is what I said. And I want to address that, because it made me uncomfortable. Scott, you're not being honest. And took is something I want to address. That word took, the subtlety of language. Now, I may never have overtly, consciously, and really, this, after some deep soul searching, what was I being a prick, and I wasn't aware of it. No. Generally, in my relationships, I was always efforting to be loving and kind and compassionate and gentle, and I was always efforting that. I may have failed miserably, but I know what my heart condition was in general. However, it was greatly impacted by pornography. Okay? Now, while my abuse may not have been overt or in your face, I engaged with pornography at a very young age. Very young. Like even prepubescent. Long story short, there was a recycle center near our home, and they had huge bundles of paper and magazines, whatever. And I remember one of the kids in my neighborhood, he's like, look what I found. It was an adult magazine, It was a pornographic magazine. adult. It makes it sound like something respectable. It was a pornographic magazine. Where'd you find that? Oh my God! And, and we went to the recycle center and we clipped open one of those bundles, huge bundles of newspaper and magazines, and we rifled through them, and there's another one. Oh, there's another one. So pornography was introduced in my life at a very young age, and my prepubescent, but I was fascinated. Wow, look at that. That is beautiful. That's amazing. That's this, that's that, right? And as I grew and reached puberty and into adulthood, that mindset had been well established, okay? And the point I'm trying to get to is that I was influenced by the pornographic images that I had seen. This is the standard for a woman. That's called airbrushing and filters. and no woman, it's like the Barbie doll image. No woman could ever possibly look like that naturally. You follow where I'm going with this, all right? But that pornographic mindset had been well established by the time I was an adult, And in my perception, even with the dogmatic religious background that I had via Catholicism and Jehovah's Witness, it was a very paradoxical place to grow up in. They seem to be in complete opposition to one another. Even with all those things, I had convinced myself that I'm not hurting anybody. They're adults. They can pose in a magazine or be in a movie or whatever. But it flooded my perceptions about sex, sexuality, what is and isn't real. Let's just put it this way. It's a movie. It's a pornographic movie. It's a fantasy. It's not real. There's a room full of people standing around filming these two other people having sex. Whatever. I don't want to go too deep into that. But I engaged in those behaviors. I watched pornography, and the mindset about what it does, that programming, what does that programming teach us? And it may be something different for everybody. Our expectation as men of what our female partner should look like, how she should behave in the bedroom. These are all unrealistic perceptions and expectations. And then so with that being said, going back to what I said in the original, so I never overtly, now maybe I didn't overtly do something, but up here, my abuse of women was by proxy. While I wasn't overtly or tangibly being violent or abusive or my mindset was abusive. Where I was coming at these relationships that I had over the course of my life, there was an expectation. There was maybe not an expectation, a hope. I don't know. I'm still, I'm 53 years old and I'm still processing this shit. Ongoing, deeper levels, layers of the onion. So I wanted to clarify that. My abuse or my ignorance, my engagement with pornography over the first 2/3 of my life, my treatment of women was influenced by that behavior. No doubt. to what extreme or what level, I have some general ideas. Some general ideas. But, you know, the book's open. Bring it. You know, I'll address it as those awarenesses come into my awareness. But I wanted to clarify that the word take. That was another thing that stuck out. You know, I've never taken anything. I wanted to clarify that. I never received anything from a woman that wasn't shared. I believe it's important to clarify that. Just the subtleties of language. Taking something without permission, without that, and there we go. Taking or receiving something without permission is stealing. It's a violation. And in that respect, I can say from my integrity that I have never received anything from anyone that wasn't willfully shared. To clarify that. The second part-ish is I made reference to a dynamic between my mother and my grandmother. Growing up, coming from North Dakota Indian Reservation, I kept saying my grandfather, my grandfather, my grandfather. No. I was like, no, that's, dude. You kept saying grandfather. Now, let's get this straight, all right? Here we go. I'm going to get it straight. My great-grandfather, this would have been around the turn of the century, 1899, 1900, prior to that even. My great-grandfather was a French-Canadian trader who opened up the one and only general store on the Indian reservation in Dunseith, Bismarck, North Dakota. It was a Sioux Indian reservation. And at that time, it was strictly prohibited to sell the Native Americans alcohol. That didn't stop Great-Grandpa. He didn't sell it to them. He couldn't sell it to them. But in order for the Native Americans to get the booze, and it was whiskey at the time, they would pimp their women out to my great-grandfather. They would go and have sex with him for booze. That was the trade. That was the barter. And inevitably, engaging in this behavior, some of these women that were coming to barter for booze would get pregnant. They were not the babies or the children that were produced through these encounters were not welcome with the tribe, and they weren't welcome sort of into the family dynamic of my great-grandfather's French-Canadian Catholic household. But what would happen and this is where my grandmother, so my great-grandfather, had relationships with these Native American Sioux women in trade for booze. One particular woman got pregnant, and they would drop the babies off at his doorstep. That's where my grandmother came from. That was the dynamic. That's where she came from. He took her in, and I've seen pictures of my great-grandfather's wife, and she was a very stoic, appearingly very unhappy woman. I can understand why. But as my grandmother grew up in that household, she was tolerated, accepted, but she was also greatly abused. And as she got older, I'm not exactly sure what the timeline was. That's something I wasn't clear about. But she ended up in a monastery nunnery to become a nun. Like, we're not going to keep her here. We'll give her to the priests, or the nuns. And she was going to become a nun. Whether that was within her will or not is unknown to me. But she didn't want to be a nun. Very well versed in Catholicism. And, she went to the monastery, she went to the nunnery, she spent a fair amount of time there, but came back to the family to be with my great-grandfather, her biological father. And if I'm understanding correctly, and I am, he was continued to be very abusive to her, his own daughter. And that's where my mother came from. So the abuse, the lineage of abuse is pretty profound in my family tree. I just wanted to clarify the dynamic of that. And then, and that's how I came, or how my grandmother basically had enough. Some of her half brothers and sisters, French Canadian on my great grandfather's side, had moved to the East Coast, Massachusetts, and they welcomed her in as a sister, and that's where she ended up, and that's how I came to be where I'm at geographically. How they came to be here geographically, how I came to be here geographically on the East Coast of the United States, which I think was really cool, because I do remember family gatherings where whatever it was, Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, a family reunion, going to these very large, and she had a lot of siblings. I think there was 12 of them. 12, 13. She was one of like 12 or 13 kids. And, Lucian, her sisters, half-sisters and brothers, Lucian, Loria, just like mind-boggling, as a kid trying to Oscar, trying to remember all the names of I wanted to crawl under the table and take a nap at these functions, and they're all smoking cigarettes and having their martinis and scotch, but where am I going with this? Who knows? I don't know. Wanted to offer some clarification, edit my own material, and offer more accurate information as and when. But to offer you also, again, a piece that surpasses our understanding, and it's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day. Made it down to the beach yesterday. Made it down to the beach. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. You couldn't put out a blanket or a chair, but you could go to the beach, walked around a bit. Really enjoyed that. And anyway, I'm going to shut up now. But that's it. That's all I got for today. Heading off to work. Peace. Peace. And I'm out. Have a great day, you guys.